Hi, this is Nicholas Yock, a registered migration and education agent from Pathway to Oz. And today I'm going to discuss with you, a very common question that we are asked, what does my employer need to do to sponsor me? Okay, so quite often employers suggest to, overseas workers, hey, look, I want to sponsor your visa to keep you here, but they don't really understand, the obligations, the costs and the requirements. This video gives a little bit of insight into what it takes to become a standard business sponsor. And we try to answer such questions as, who can sponsor someone? What are the obligations of the company? What are the costs? What are some of the common documents required? And what is the process? So look, to be able to apply for an employer-sponsored visa, there's generally 3 steps. The first is standard business sponsorship. The second is the nomination, and the third is the visa application. We're going to put out separate videos on the nomination and the visa application, and this is specifically about becoming the standard business sponsor. Once again, guys, as always, the information is general in nature, and if you do want to sit down with someone to chat about your circumstances in detail, book in for a consultation. All right. So look, there are several different sort of types of employer-sponsored visas. Without a doubt, probably the most common is the subclass 482 employer TSS visa. So this is a temporary employer-sponsored visa, and the one that we're going to cover. You can apply for this visa in a lot of different occupations in anywhere in Australia. There are other visas such as the subclass 494 regional employer-sponsored or the subclass 186 permanent employer-sponsored. We're not going to be touching on these today. This is going to be specifically to become a standard business sponsor for a TSS visa. All right, so who can sponsor for a 482 visa, for an employer-sponsored visa? The very first step, as I said before, is to apply to become a standard business sponsor. In my opinion, this is the easiest part of the 3. I feel like the nomination and the visa application are a little bit more difficult, and they'll be discussed in a separate video. Some of the requirements are that the company needs to be a legally established and currently operating business. The business just needs to be established, and it can be all sorts of different structures. So it can be a limited liability company, a trust, a partnership. It just needs to be operating. One of the other requirements, it needs to have no adverse information regarding your business. So obviously immigration doesn't want companies with lawsuits or with who are going bankrupt and all sorts of negative information about them. So the immigration department must not be aware of sort of any adverse information. If the company is operating in Australia, the company will want to show a strong record of hiring locals and must not engage in any discriminatory recruitment practices. So look, there's not much in that really. Some of the obligations for a company, and I'll put a link below because it's quite lengthy and you can show it to your employer and you can go through everything. But essentially the company needs to agree to update immigration with any changes to the business. Must ensure that the visa holder is only employed in the occupation it was nominated for. Must ensure the visa holder is paid the equivalent terms and conditions of another Australian. Keep records and show compliance to immigration if they request. The sponsor must assume and pay all costs for the standard business sponsorship and nomination. And essentially the sponsor must also agree to pay the travel costs to remove the visa holder if they do become unlawful. So if you run away and immigration got to track you down, immigration are going to require the sponsor to pay for that. Look, so these are the main requirements. You can check the link below for a full list of the requirements. All right, so what are the costs of the company? All right, so immigration currently charges $420 for the standard business sponsorship application charge. It charges an additional $330 for the nomination, which is something that the company, step 2, which the company must pay. And finally, it must pay what's called the training levy. Now, this is just a fee that immigration charges for every visa holder for every year they're employed. So it's $1,200 per person or per applicant per year for a company with a turnover of under 10 million, and $1,800 for a company with a turnover of more than 10 million. So let's say you're employed for 2 years. The training levy would be $2,400 if the company has a turnover of less than 10 million, or $3,600 if the company has a turnover of above 10 million. All right, so what are some of the most common documents required? Look, so every application's different, and this is just a general list in nature, but these are some of the most common documents. obviously your ABN, your ACN if you have it, business name extract, tax returns, 4 BAS statements, financial reports, organisation charts, bank statements, lease agreements. If you're a franchisee agreement, if the company's set up as a trust, copy of the trust deed and things like that. As I said before, it's very general in nature, but those are the most common documents. All right, so what is the process? Well, look, for a company to become a standard business sponsor, it would need to apply for this through lodging an application through the immigration portal. Once you have lodged the standard business sponsorship and attached all the relevant documentation, you'll be given a transaction reference number, which you can then use to apply for the nomination and in turn the visa application after that. All right, so some commonly asked questions that we get. Can a new business sponsor someone? Okay, so yes, technically it can. However, immigration will probably need to want to be provided with a little bit more documentation to show that the company is operating lawfully and looking to expand and grow. So some of the documentation include business plans, recently won contracts, expense receipts, bank statements, lease agreements, evidence of hiring new employees, BAS statements, etc. So let's say, for example, if it's a restaurant, a reasonably new restaurant, evidence of the lease agreement, evidence of all the cooking equipment and stoves, etc. bought, evidence of hiring new employees, evidence of the business plan, etc. Immigration might not approve a sponsor, which is just kind of like set up in the garage with very little expenses, very little sort of business plans and things like that. Does the business need to employ a specific number of employees to become a standard business sponsor? All right, so look, there are some specific occupations where there are caveats such as accountants and other things like that, where the company may need to sponsor or may need to employ a certain number of employees. However, in most occupations, it's not a requirement. We've processed standard business sponsorship applications before, for example, for tradesmen who, it might only be them in the company or them and, potentially one other employee, and they've had no issues with it. Please note, if there are not many other sort of employees, you're gonna really wanna demonstrate to immigration the strong commitment to employing local labor. Is there a specific turnover that the company needs to have to be able to sponsor someone? Once again, guys, there are caveats with certain occupations, like accountants, where there might be, a specific turnover, but for most occupations and most businesses, it's not a requirement. However, immigration will want to see that you can cover all costs, obligations, employment contracts. So if the business is, quite recent and has a really low turnover, it's going to want to show evidence of new employment contracts, evidence of finances, how it's going to pay to cover all these obligations and things like that. Look, I hope you found this useful. As I said before, we're going to be making a couple of other videos covering the nomination and the visa application part. But hopefully you can sit down with your employer, you can show it to them, they can have a bit better idea. Please note, it is general in nature. If you do want to sit down and discuss your specific details, feel free to book in for a consultation. Thank you.